So yes, this is, I don't know, third, fourth time, maybe more that I've given a presentation about WeGovNYCs DataBook to the open data community. Every time, more fun than the last. And every time the amount of data sets increases that we've integrated into our databook.wegov.nyc interface. So in fact, you were promoting combining 40 plus NYC open data sets, but now we're at over 50. So I'm Devin. I'm a software producer who organizes teams to deliver software for startups, nonprofits, government agencies. My day job, I work for a company called Grid Market that facilitates distributed energy projects on their product, their marketplace product. I co-founded a nonprofit called Sarapis, which is the nonprofit that hosts this WeGov.NYC project. I've been a paid contractor for Beta NYC, working for city agencies, working for community boards. I was born and raised in New York City, and like many of you, I think New York City should be the best run city in the world because it's the best city in the world. And to billions of people around the world, New York City represents the melting pot concept. There are a lot of great cities around the world, few melting pot like New York does. So I think it's incumbent on us to deliver a extremely effective melting pot solution, because you've seen great global cities around the world, efficient municipalities around the world, usually with more homogenous populations. So you've got proof to the world that the melting pot works. And so, to do that, what effective, the approach that we at WeGov propose and we try to follow is the digital service organization model that was first started by the Government Digital Service in the UK. That's been replicated by 18F at the General Service Administration. That is spreading across the country and across the world as a modern open source model that looks much more like how software companies develop solutions, like startup software companies develop solutions, than governments have in the past. So less contractors, more open source software, more GitHub management, less complex giant contracts. And so we advocate that approach. We hope New York City adopts more of it, because it hasn't adopted it like many other cities have, like Boston and Philly and San Francisco and others. So hoping for more DSO work in the city government. And we hope for that by producing volunteer-run projects that support open source software and open data projects in the city, hopefully showing city government and the public better ways to use technology to improve how the city works. We're interested in projects that make New York City more open, effective, and participatory all the time. If folks have projects like that, they can come to me, they can come to us, and we can deliver, hopefully, maybe some advice or maybe some support. We support projects such as the Civic Tech Guide, which is a global directory of civic tech projects around the world. civictech.guide, great resource for kind of finding innovative civic tech projects. The Reported app, which some of you might be aware of, which allows people to report violations of city street cars doing things they shouldn't be doing, particularly taxis. It's got integration to 311. The Mutual Aid Resources Guide, which was a COVID era project that's still functioning, that is like a 2-on-1 style solution, like a nonprofit service directory for the New York City area, focused around starting with the COVID, starting from like the directory for COVID response, but it's kind of morphed into just what the community seems to be. And then Copic.nyc is where I lament that I have to archive the website for the Commission on Public Information and Communications, because I think that commission would be amazing if it were still functioning, because it could do a lot of this type of work. But our hallmark project is the DataBook. And so the DataBook is kind of three things. It's a data pipeline that normalizes NYC open data sets. It's a data repository that makes those over 50 now normalized open data sets available in bulk, either via S3 link or via our API at api.databook.wegov.nyc, and an interface application that is, you could call it, I don't know, a reference implementation. It's a vision for how to organize New York City government information in a way that's different than how, in a data-first way, as opposed to a kind of more of a consumer-oriented, traditional, let's build websites for stuff when we think we need to. But really the vision is, and I'm sure like many people here, we're talking to civic tech people, the vision is SimCity that is true, an authentic SimCity implementation with citizen-driven budget decision-making, participatory decision points, useful data maps, digital twin environment. This was the original vision that existed 6-7 years ago, which came into, and that is why we decided we had to go into probably decade plus long data normalization project so we could even approach achieving such a thing. So one day I think we'll get there. But yeah, that's the dream. SimCity 2000, I think, for New York City government. All right. So what is the problem that we address through our data pipeline at WeGovNYC, this DataBook? And that is that open data isn't normalized. So, kudos to the open data team for producing, but I think is probably maybe the world's most comprehensive open data repo for a municipality. I think it could be. I spent some time looking at, there are many things that other cities do better than New York City does, but I don't think I saw a single example, and I looked for a lot of them, but I don't think I saw a single example that is publishing more and more operational open data. So we do a great job publishing this data, and increasingly in an automated way, which is perfect, which is what we need. But that data, as we can see from the screenshot here, is not normalized. What does that mean? It means that you've got the column header agency written 10 different ways. Agency name, camel case, agency, all caps. Each way will break your database join. You can't join the agency unless you normalize that column header. Same thing with council district, same thing with every possible variable in data. So without that normalization, it makes it very hard to build multi-table data applications on top of this data. And so we got to normalize that data, and that's what we do. So we establish a UID index that enables us to connect this data. We built an automated data pipeline that applies those UIDs to open data sets as soon as they're published, and then we republish those data sets with normalized data. What does that functionally mean? Functionally, it means that we take agency space name and we turn it into agency every time on every data set that we're indexing. So we're doing 50 plus data sets. So that means we're replicating the agency column, whatever identifier it's being used, we're renaming it. And we're doing that for council district. We're doing that for community district. We're doing that for other identifiers. So we do that in an automated way. We publish into those data sets. We have 53 data sets comprising over 12 million records currently in this system. Like I said before, data sets are updated automatically. The normalization process that we've developed is real quick. I'm not going to get into it, but it's quick. It involves just some Google Sheets and a little management application. And we publish this data so it's API accessible so other people can do it. Another view of this pipeline is here, right? We're indexing interesting data sets in an Airtable we're identifying the data sets there that we want to transform. We have a little custom transformer app that's combined with an automated Google Sheet interface that enables us to identify the UIDs to do this normalization, publish it to S3, import it into our Postgres, publish the Postgres with FastAPI through FastAPI, and then build apps on top of FastAPI. And I'm not going to, right. How do we do this? We're we want to do capital stuff. We search capital in the NYC open data portal. We find all the capital data sets. We figure out what's in there. And then we evaluate them. We index them. We down select the ones that look like they could fit within, kind of our interface concept. We match and normalize them. And then we design them, pulling the fields out that we're going to do, kind of making a blocky wireframe, and then developing that wireframe using the Federal Design Standards version 2.0. Version 3.0 came out, slight tweaks. But these Federal Design Standards are one of the things that make that digital service organizations do, which is instead of redesigning having all these different website designs and hiring different contractors to design websites on a website by website basis, they instead create a fully flushed out design standard showing what does it look like when we have a page, what does it look like when we have a toggle, how do we do nav menus, doing it over and over and over again. Doing it over and over and over again. Yes, Dave. There we go. Slide 3. And then that means that their developers, when they develop websites, they can just reference this single, fully fleshed out, fully invested in design guide every time, and they don't have to rebuild. They don't have to rebuild interfaces. Reduces the amount of conversation, makes things so much faster, and then you can really focus on building a beautiful design standard and design guide. The feds have already done it for us. I would propose that the city should be forking it, adding our colors. I'm sure none of us love, we've got nice colors. I think Open Data Week did a great job pulling the best out of the blue and orange situation that we've been handed down through our Dutch heritage. So anyway, so we do that. So I'll just go through quickly the sections that we have, and then I'll zoom in on a few of the sections and we can click around. So what do we have in here? So we got capital programs. So basically these are profiles for every city capital project, and these are capital project, OMB style capital projects, not school construction authority capital projects, which we've finally added to the database, to the system this last cycle, which we'll show in the process. But so we go through the capital program, and I'll zoom in on that one. Organization profiles. So we've got over 32 different data sets connected to city agencies. So you can find all types of deep information about city agencies through these profiles. We'll go into that a little bit. People profiles, which includes, I separated it out, but now we're gonna bring it. I combine them together, but we're gonna bring back its own civil service type of section. But basically, it's civil service titles. So all the data you can imagine in New York City Open Data about civil service titles, as well as the people who have those titles. And we got payroll data in there too. I don't think it's that polite to have payroll data in there, but it's such a big data set, we put it in. We've got notices. So we have all of the city record. We kind of have a different interpretation of how the city record could be and how that is integrated into organization and to agencies. So you can go to the agency profile page, see all of the city record, see all the records, the events. You can add to your Google Calendar through an iCal feed for that agency, and then all the other notices we have as well. We even, one of them, so we got notices. We also have schools, which is new for this year. I'll go through schools, which combines DOE data with school construction authority data and some Department of Health data and a few other data sets there. And then we have districts, which is our geographies tool set or feature, which has neighborhood, city council districts, community districts, and now school districts. So I should have gone through the slides because I got a slide for each of these. But I got a question, which is great because the database is hosted. It's all AWS. All of our databases are in AWS. Yeah, it's all in AWS. That was a question. Where do we host our Postgres database? Answer, AWS. And do we have public subnets? Yes. And we have S3 buckets that are available everything's public. So we have S3 buckets that you can pull any of these data sets from if you don't want to use our API, which I don't think anyone has used our API. So if you try to use the API, please let me know. I would love to hear about anyone using it in practice. And if you have any trouble, we'll troubleshoot it. Okay, so capital programs. I kind of went through all this stuff. It's more fun to click around. Organizations, right? So organizations is a key element, especially if people here from city government want to learn more about their fellow agencies. Definitely started the project with organizations. All right, so we're combining notices from the city record. We've got records and data, so like all the reports and stuff, everything that you imagine that you could find useful on New York City Open Data that could be collated to an agency from the view of a government, from like the view of, really the executive's office, right? Because this is kind of a sim city model, right? Where you're the mayor. So basically from the mayor's perspective, what would be useful, anything from New York City Open Data that would be, we've tried to collate together. And so we've got, the required reports, the data sets, things like that. We have finances. We haven't dove deep into finances yet. We just kind of have the data tables there. And when I start going through the tool, I think it'll be more clear what I mean when I say that. But you got the finances, projects, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. I mean, I'm open. Listen, if anyone wants, so someone asked if we could do something specific technically with the data sets, we exist as a para tech support organization for city folks or for data analysts. So if there's anything you want from in terms of how we make our data accessible, we feel like we've done the hard work of normalizing. We're extremely excited about other people using the data. And so, yeah, we could use other technologies to make the SQL easier. So yes, just feel free to reach out to me. We have a Slack that a lot of people are in, but no one talks on. But I will be there. But email me, Devin at Sarapis. You can get into that. I see that we're into chat mode, so I'll answer a few more chats before I can continue. Right. Public health stuff. So we try to stay away from doing things that are timely and interesting with WeGovNYCs. A lot of folks, as you can see when you go through the Open Data Week, there are a lot of folks and a lot of projects that say, oh, okay, COVID is interesting. This year I'm working on a COVID project. I'm passionate about bikes and traffic deaths. I'm going to do this app over here for that, that type of thing, this type of thing. What we try to do is we try to focus on delivering a clear interface for regularly updated, automatically updated NYC open data. So data that's really coming from systems consistently, so that there's an interface for that. And which also means it's basically, in many ways, it's the boring data. And that's, other people will do the interesting data, the more interesting data and the more interesting views of that data on a timely basis, especially if we encourage a vibrant open data, open tech, civic tech community in the city. We try to do the older stuff. So the data sets that we work with generally are more consistent. A lot of them, when we started the project, were not being automatically updated. Now a lot of them are being automatically updated, which is great, which means that there's less schema change. When schemas change, it breaks our system. We get an alert. When UIDs change, so we match UIDs and then, to normalize them. When those change, it doesn't break our system, but it might mean that we're missing some data. We also get an alert, and it's very easy. It doesn't require any development time to update those matches. So I think that hopefully that answered Isaac's question. So I talked about all these various segments. So I'm just going to kind of go through a bit of a case study on two of the areas, capital budgets, which, because I looked through the list, I saw a lot of New York City government people. I'm not trying to go over what a capital budget means, but it's basically all of the pool infrastructure that we use every day to make sure it works great. And, I say here in the slide, maybe it's a little brutal of me that it's grossly mismanaged. I know it's a tough job to manage this capital budget. And the city's got, Lord knows, a very difficult set of procedures for capital project management. However, that doesn't mean this information shouldn't be transparent. and maybe we should be estimating our capital budgets a little bit differently so that we're not in a situation where it looks like the budget is 50% over and that budget is larger than the GDP of a medium-sized nation. For comparison, I love this comparison. Philadelphia's entire 5-year capital budget is $9.5 million, and where our capital budget is, what was it here? Right, originally $88 billion, now $141 billion. It's a big budget. So I think it's incumbent on us to have the best interface possible for the capital budget, the documents. We got the 10-year strategy that comes out, which is a 140-page PDF. We have kind of the first document that got me involved in this entire WeGov project. It was the beginning of my descent, which was the capital commitment plan, which is 500 or 5,000 PDFs, 5,000 PDF pages in 4 different volumes, right? Which originally, when this project was done, we were scraping those PDF pages, but now thanks to open data, it makes it a lot easier. Adopted capital budget, 500 plus page PDF, and then the capital project details data set, or capital project details data. All these are now open data sets, but before they weren't. And now it's a 7,000 page PDF in 6 volumes. So long story short, a lot of pages of PDFs, perfect opportunity for data to play an intervention. Under de Blasio, we had Capital Planning Explorer and the Capital Project Dashboard, which basically Capital Planning Explorer, city planning data, Capital Project Data Dashboard, OMB data. Under the Adams administration, I think they put a new interface on top of the OMB data, but they didn't merge the OMB, DCP, and DOT data sets, because DOT also publishes some capital project data sets. And so we did that. We merged all this stuff together to deliver a capital project profile page that has mapped points and polygons for projects, polygons really for the DOT projects, points for for the rest. By comparing different publishing dates based on the open data, we can deliver a change analysis. So we can switch between published dates. We can also show cost over time, different. We can show over time how the estimates changed. We have milestones that we can show whether they're what they were original, what they are now. Recent spending, we collated this with commitments, and people could also go on. Very few people do go on each one of these pages and add a comment to a project. I've got an ERD here just showing kind of how these data sets connect to each other. We're at 3:30, so I'm not gonna go too deeply into it, but I will say that projects have project IDs. Actually, I will go do it a little deeply into it. Capital, we have project IDs, which are capital projects, right? So this involves the work on physical thing. We have budget lines, which can be a discrete project or a lump sum for a bunch of projects. And we have project types. And recently, when we did an update, we did more with the project types, and that allowed us to connect a lot more data to things, to lump projects together in more interesting ways. And these are, I think there's in the 20s or 30 different types of project types. So there's more to do. We want to bring in comptroller checkbook data. The Checkbook NYC website, also an absolutely fantastic website, but and really cutting edge when it was released, I believe in like 2010-ish under, I think it was Lou who did it. I think it's like a Drupal 6 implementation. So this thing is really, really due for an upgrade. I hope Brad Lander's team gets to deliver an awesome upgrade here. But really collating this comptroller checkbook data with kind of all of the executive branches planning data and management data would be really awesome. But checkbook doesn't have project IDs or budget lines, so I haven't figured out how that could be done. Although it seems like something that would be very useful for the government to do, because then you can both see the planning of the project as well as the spend and the management of the project, as well as like when the checks are getting cut. for the project. Speaking of a project, if you hear loud noises behind me, that's because they're demolishing the building right next to me, right behind the school. Born and raised in New York, I love it. So let's see. So just to clarify, in the old days, we got the data from PDFs. Now all this stuff's in open data, makes life better. I did not get the data from PDFs myself. Other people struggled on the PDF scanning front and did it. And all the credit goes to them, Chris Long and others. Okay, so another new section we have here is schools. That New York City's got, then in New York City open data, we've got public schools and charter schools, about 80% public, 20% charter. The data sets that we have for both of them are not the same. By rolling up data, though, it's really nice and interesting and fun when you roll up data from things like school data sets and you get, okay, we have 2,190 schools, 1,003,000 some odd students. You see that data, those sums come out, and then you look online and see like, okay, what are the totals that are being published elsewhere? And they're pretty close. It's a fun open data day. So schools also have capital projects, but those capital projects are managed by School Construction Authority. They are not reported in the same way through the capital project budget system as all the other capital projects that are. And instead they have like these large blocks of money that exist in that system, and then they get specific, and SCA gets specific in its own data, which was recently added to NYC Open Data, and we brought it. So public schools, we have basic info, enrollment, demographic, health code violations for public and charter. But then for public schools, we have additional data. So here's a school profile. So we've got all the basic data up here. Enrollment, past, present, future, attendance, capacity. So this is SCA data, which goes into the physical building's capacity and the school organization's capacity, demographic data, some health data, and then SCA project data, just to get an idea. And this is where things, I think, start really getting fun, and why our approach, I think, is cool, which is that we have other data sets indexed already, and so we begin to kind of see a network effect of scale as we connect all those data sets together. So in this school's data set data profile, we've got we're doing all this collation through ID numbers, and those ID numbers that often these ID numbers didn't need to be normalized because these are actually like legitimate ID numbers that are not really human readable, and so humans aren't kind of fidgeting with them. So the only normalization that needs to happen, the IDs themselves don't need to be matched, but the columns need to be matched. So we've used 15 data sets, which I believe, which we list here, which I'll get back to. But basically we index using, we connect all this data using DOEs, BBN IDs, School Construction Authority's building codes, Department of Buildings, BBLs, New York State DOE's beds, ID numbers for schools, DCP's facility names. And then the city.nyc did a project where they collated the NYPD's campus names to DBNs. And so we worked with them. They published that in GitHub in open fashion. So we use that also. Although there isn't much to do with campus name data sets at this point, maybe in the future, we'll get more NYPD data about schools. Maybe we missed some data sets that exist out there, but I think it was a cool little collaboration to do that. And so when you've done all this kind of data analysis, it's also really easy to spin up district profiles. So we have the school district polygons. You can click on any district, see all the schools in it, see the data from the school locations open data set about those schools there. You can click on the school to go to that school profile. We also roll up, the number of students, the amount of projects, the amount of School Construction Authority projects in that district, the budget for those projects, I believe there's the budget and there's the cost of those projects. I'm not an expert. I don't know what the difference is necessarily on those two things, but I'm sure there's something there. And then the project cost per student, which as you can see in this PDF, this was wrong particularly. But you can see different SCEA project costs on a district by district level per student. It can be pretty wide. You can also see that the demolition happening behind me is not school related, but there is a lot of scaffolding on the public school across from me. And I clicked on the public school in the data book, and I could very quickly see what they're replacing the windows. Basically, I could see that in the system, which I thought was and I impressed at least one neighbor with that insight. Although I'm sure the scheduling information on that, we didn't do a full analysis of the SCA scheduling like we did of the capital projects, normal capital projects. But I'm going to guess it's going to be late. It's not going to take just a year. Anyway, so we got 15 data sets here, that are new, 14 new ones. One, the facility data set we already had. And I guess I want to say, the purpose of this is not to build a better website than the many websites the city has about New York City schools. The purpose is really to show an alternative approach to kind of the idea of just building websites. We have all this data. We're publishing a tremendous amount of information through an alternative workflow with open data, right? Like if you think about what workflow is required for the city to publish information to the web, when you think about websites, you've got one workflow. When you think of the workflow necessary for publishing it to open data, you have a different workflow. And my contention is that if there's more opportunity to put content, even like consumer-oriented or resident-oriented content, into open data, published through the open data workflow instead of whatever bespoke website workflow agencies are currently using or units are currently using, and then build the website around the published open data in an automated fashion, in a more automated fashion, instead of building new sites, all the time, or using, what is it called? Open text, using the 30-plus-year-old CMS that the city's paying like 10 plus million a year to maintain, to publish stuff on like the city website or whatever, one of the many city websites. So I think I think that would be cool. I would love to see a city website using open data, but for like a front end purpose, for an information, as an informational website. Anyway, so city's got a lot of school websites. We're here, like I said, for the more boring stuff. And to make things less boring, what are we doing next? We're adding more data visualizations throughout the system. We're looking at some AI summaries using this open data, and we're exploring partnerships, particularly with people who are making like small, apps that are focused on a specific theme or things like that. A lot of these apps that are done to showcase, to achieve a goal, to showcase some work. We try to work with people who want to make that thing something that's going to last year after year after year after year. Because we're here, we're not planning to go anywhere. So we'd love to integrate other people's ideas for pages, for sections, for views, for charts, into this application. All of this stuff is open source. It's done in the public interest. So it's my invitation to collaborate. We're always advocating for more and better normalized and for normalized open data, and API-driven web apps driven by open data, published through the open data workflow. We're looking to collaborate with journalism professors and students who want to use the data to do research. We've done a few little projects, but I think there's a lot more that could be done around delivering dashboards and doing data-driven projects related to open data, city open data. We're happy to work with elected officials, although I don't think I've written a single outreach email to any of them. One day that'll happen, but we're willing to do work to help out anyone who's requesting things that is reasonable. Sharing our data if people want it through whatever method is practical and automatable and in the open source environment, we're happy to do. And we're happy to work with anybody in city agencies to make transparency information more clear and public and to solve problems. We're also looking for sponsors. We have none right now. We've got server bills. This is a passion project of me and some other folks. So that's fine. We're not trying to make a funded NGO out of this WeGov thing, but it would be cool to have someone paying attention. Right, you had this up with a lot of slides, and for that, I really appreciate it. You can click around. I'll click around some stuff. That's always fun. We've got 42 minutes, and I'll take questions on the chat, or if people want to, I don't know, if there's some speaking option that is manageable by our friendly open data moderator, then we could do that too. But I've got one question in the chat that I have to read. I'm not the fastest reader here, so. Yeah, okay, so someone says, do you think this project demonstrates that some of the city's legislatively mandated reports should be replaced with open data tables and dashboard publications? From Isaac. I think Isaac thinks that some of the city's legislatively mandated reports should be replaced with open data tables and dashboard publications. And I do too. I actually think dashboards and interactive reports, particularly ones that don't change year after year, where the data changes only, is the solution to many of our world's problems, including the journalism problem. I would love to rant longer about that, but I think we've gotten as far as we can on clicky narrative content in the world of journalism, and I think where we're moving towards, if we want people to be able to make sense of their world, is more consistent dashboards that link to deeper information resources. Our World in Data does a great job. I don't know if you've ever seen that website, but Our World in Data does a great job of delivering that type of interface. You could say Wikipedia and Wikidata does similar. But yeah, 100% love the idea of more open data tables and dashboards. Any other questions? If not, I will click and talk. Okay, thank you, Nathan, for that compliment here. Okay, so let's, I don't know, what do people, can someone in the chat say, well, I'll go into organizations. I think organizations are most interesting. And actually, let me go to the latest version because we have our test version, because we've got a few interesting things there that you can't see on WeGov right now. So in the latest version, let me go back to the organization. So we have an organization directory here. It's actually got way more than just city agencies. I think it's over 1,000 plus organizations, although city agencies is really what the solution is built for. Yeah, we've got 1,100 organizations in here, including unions, publications, elected officials, business improvement districts, stuff like that. When we index open data sets, we get a lot of information. And actually that reminds me, I want to just highlight or salute the work that's being done at Passport. Passport has a public interface now that actually does an amazing job of delivering more information about vendors. There's 20,000 plus vendors in the city, in the city system. If we went through checkbook data, or in fact, there are a few other data sets. We could have added a vendor tab within 20,000 vendors and then kind of built interface around city vendors and and their performance ratings and all this stuff. And that's actually something we're excited to do. I believe I've had some conversations with folks. I'm pretty sure the Passport people want to be publishing their data sets through the open data portal. Right now, their data sets are publicly available by clicking on their website and downloading. But if they were published in the open data portal, we could do more with it. They've got unbelievably great data there. and linking that to notices, city record content, basically linking city record content to a bunch of this stuff, I think is just the most fun idea possible, because the city record really has a newsy, the latest today type of thing. And for people who care, for the very specific audience that really cares about the city record, it's a very important audience, even though it's very small. It's a very motivated audience. So we would love to be delivering more like city record style solutions, and like that primarily being connecting city record stuff to these deeper data resources. One of the fun things we did when I don't believe the city has released a organizational chart recently, de Blasio did, and I took a late night basically creating a organizational chart view of all of city government here that actually is clickable. And so let's find Doris. So you can see Doris is under the council to the mayor, right? Which is under the mayor's office. You're at all this under the city of New York, people of the city. So if I click on Doris, so we go to the Doris agency profile. And probably not the best one, because there's a lot of stuff that's not here. Also, this is the test site. So you can also do this, do this on the real site. So let's find, I do children's services a lot, but they don't have that many notices that go up. But who does is, design, these guys. Workhorse of the city. Okay, so here we've got are my notices not coming in on the test site? Okay, so normally we would have notices that would come in here that you could click. So we just have an error. We've been switching the profile a bit, but basically here are all of the notices of hearings. All right, you can see them here. You can actually see the published content here. This all comes in open data. Click, I believe, right, you go to the city record website for that. But like getting into it, so they've got all the notices, records, and data. So like, what is their required report someone was mentioning? So here's all the required reports that they're supposed to be making. Click this, and you go to something that didn't work, which is not surprising because sometimes we just don't want to do any of these work. Yeah. Okay. So here we are. So you can see we've got like required reports here. This is really, I think, just kind of the most boring but general concept. This website data set is new, which is cool. Right. With these are like the data set. This is their data on city websites. I think this is a cool and interesting idea. Finances, I'm not going to get into because there's just a lot there. Staffing is fun. Because I've been very much interested in civil service titles, as one is. And this is something that's new for us right now, which is that we're beginning to add pie charts and charts around the data to show what's in here. So, right, the design and construction is just all personal services apparently. But if you start getting into the title codes, you can see administrative management, 7.6% for construction project management, civil engineers, there's a 6.9% of people, blah, blah, blah. So you can see all these codes here. You can also see that same data reflected in the data table. We wanted to go in. Now we're starting to get to administrative project manager, the civil service title page. And so there's a lot of the civil service title codes are very useful for connecting data. So that's another join that we use. And so the description, everything around civil services is, to me, this is the lowest hanging fruit for reform in the city. The ability to find civil service tests is the hardest thing. And in terms of automation, impossible. Descriptions, almost impossible. There is some convention that we discovered that works for maybe 38% of civil service titles. This one didn't work, but sometimes a web page opens here that actually shows the description of a civil service title. Would love for this to be easier. But with the civil service code, you can see, okay, the positions available in the schedule for and what agency for these various titles. You can see, you can click and then go. So like we could go to the police department. And now we can see, let's see, we may know this is from the police department. But now we're in the police department. So connecting all this data set together, this is where it's like, oh yeah, once you have all this data organized, then every time you see an agency name, you can make that link to their agency profile. And so it makes it easier to navigate through the information that we have here. Job opportunities, this comes from Open Dataset, right? The city's job portal. On the actual employees, this is the civil list. Candidates, these are all the people, well, I guess but all the people who passed the civil service test. You can see aggregate salaries of this civil service title, the number of employees, and their position by agency. So we can see design construction's got the most administrative project managers of this title code, which has a B on it. So it's some variant, which is probably why the description pop-up doesn't work. But you can see, right, you've got DP, you've got transportation, etc. So, Isaac asked, does any of this have retention information? One could, I think, one could come up with a retention metric based on this, probably. We have the agency. One of the reasons why I like this, one of the benefits I think of the DataBook is that because you can navigate through it, you can see where the holes are pretty quickly, where the gaps are, where the opportunities are, because it works off of kind of a more intuitive logic than looking at SQL tables or even just like individual spreadsheets. And so, yeah, I mean, if we think through that together, can we do retention? Yeah, we have published. So if we go and on a title by title basis, we can see the amount of employees based on calendar year from the civil list. And right on their filters on all these tables, usually there's a published date filter or something. So oftentimes in the data book, you might see a data set that doesn't look like it makes that much sense because there's like replicated data there. But it's usually because one of these year selectors is just like not selected. So just continuing to go through. You also have a people tab, which has the green book contacts. So contacts, public contacts for agencies. We've got, the employees of that agency through the civil list. Like I said, that before I was showing it as a filter on civil service title. This is showing it as a filter on agency. And so this is another example where you might see someone many times. That's because you got to pick calendar year. So 2022, these are all the people. These are the 7,408 people who, probably work for the Administration for Children's Services. And, we've got candidates. Then we've got projects. So this is your capital projects. You can see them on the map. Hopefully, this loads effectively. Yeah, so you can see there aren't that many capital projects for child services, but you can see them here and you can even click onto them. And then renovations for a secure detention facility. And now we're in the capital projects section, looking at this is the capital projects profile page that I was talking about in the presentation. You can see here, right, we've got, and you can see I'm not picking my best examples all the time here, but you can see, right, we've got milestones. You have next 5 years of spending that are projected. So it looks like if this is accurate, 2023, that this is like on pause for a little bit, and they're projecting that work's going to kind of continue again in Y4. Y4 after 2023 would be around, would be actually, this would make sense, would be around 2027. They're going to start spending money on this again. So you can see budget over time. This is based on publication date, prior spending based on publication date. kind of the reported spending. So what this means is they haven't been spending any money on this project yet. There was a budget for it that didn't get spent. There is no budget for it now, but there will be budget for it in year 4. That's how I read, or year 5. That's how I read this. But I'm no expert. I'm just collating the data and then looking and see what I find here. And so now if we look here, right, you can see this is one facet of this additional information. I should probably label where this one came from because I forget, but then we have our commitments. So we can see there were commitments, right, in 2023, and then they stopped, and now their commitments starting again in 2026. That's pretty much correct. You see here. Okay, so 2020. So the commitments continued. I guess the spending has just stopped. People can comment on stuff here. We can also get, this definitely needs some improvement, but we can see kind of how this changes have changed. How the changes between publication dates, like what has changed. So start dates, end dates, when things get kind of at the end of things, sometimes years get funky. So, there's funky stuff in open data. Generally, one of the things we don't do, except for when it's clearly like a summary, we don't change any of the data. So all the data here is like, it's from the open data and it's been normalized and it's being published. But when it comes to stuff like this is where we might be breaking things, right? Because we're doing our own calculations on these roll-ups, and maybe our calculation is off, which is possible. Sometimes we misinterpret things. So we're at the end of our time. No one had asked any more questions in the chat, so I took that as an opportunity to ramble. But I will sign off by saying much gratitude for your time listening to this. Much gratitude for Open Data team for making all this data possible and organizing this event. And I'm really happy to work with anybody in city government to help out with any of this. If they're decision makers that find this interface useful, or people that find this interface useful and they want tweaks, they want additions, they want to talk, we're here for it. We exist to help make the city run better, and we appreciate all of your efforts doing just that. So I believe we're about to hit 4 o'clock. Any last questions or anything on the chat? Let me know. If not, folks can reach me at Devin@Sarapis.org. I'm on Twitter. We've got this link here, tinyurl.com/WeGovNYC. People can go and they can kind of see our wiki. Got a Slack that people have found. So thanks a lot. Thanks for all your service, and thanks for people who are just interested in city open data. Keep at it. Make nice things. And that's it for me.